I was just gonna say the same.
Howdy, everyone. Welcome to the Erasmus Expeditions. Today we are kicking off a brand new mini campaign. This time it is going to be Firefly themed. This is called Stepping Stones. This is going to be our session 0. I'm super excited and more than just a little bit nervous. For one, because I've never run a Firefly game yet, and I'm a huge fan, so I'm hoping that I do the property justice. But also, I have never run this system before. This is Cortex Prime. I've only played it once, and it was hellacious to chew through it and learn it. And I hope that I've learned it well enough to run a fun game of it. But super excited to be getting into this, and I'm very happy with the cast that we have put together for this game. So in just a moment, I'm going to pass things over to them so that they can introduce themselves, plug anything that they would like to, tell you where you can find them on the internet, etc. And then we're going to get things started. But before I do that, I am going to give the same warning that I give at the beginning of all of my games. If mature subject matter and mature language are things that bother you, then this channel is not a place for you to ever stop. But if those things do not bother you, then welcome, Freak Show. We're here for you. So, yeah, I think that's everything that I want to cover business-wise up front. So we're going to go ahead and pass things over, and we're going to start with Lloyd.
Hello, that's me. I'm Lloyd. I have a Twitch channel called Twitch/JarlDM. It's not as catchy as when it was on YouTube, I think. You don't have the channel name in the same way. It's not as nice. Yeah, that's it. I run games there sometimes, and I play in games all over the place, and I'm extremely excited to get to grips with this.
Absolutely. Anybody who mentions a channel, you should be able to find a link for it down below. I think I covered all the bases as far as YouTube and Twitch goes, at least. I think there's a Twitter handle or two in there. So yeah, please do take the time to go check these fine people out. They're all awesome individuals, and you won't be sorry. Speaking of awesome individuals, next we have Jeff.
Hello, I'm Jeff. I am part of Tabletop Terrors, so you can catch me over with Tim and James over on that channel if you want to see some videos about RPGs or just creativity and the creative process in general, anything like that. So yeah, looking forward to this game. We have a really awesome crew of people that I'm happy to be amongst.
Happy to have you back on the channel, Jeff. It's been a while. I guess Momentum, the Whispers and Fragments campaign, might have been the last time. But you should, if you watched Whispers and Fragments, you should see a lot of familiar faces. Most of the crew here gathered were people who played in that game. So yeah, it's awesome to see everybody's shiny, happy faces again. Speaking of shiny and happy faces, no stranger to the channel, Austin.
Hello, I'm super happy to be back. I, as always, have absolutely nothing to plug. I don't do anything online. I don't share any creative things. I work on shit in my own time and then try to run games for my friends, and then none of them really are that super into it. So, it's kind of, that's about how much I create. But, I'm super excited to get into this. I rewatched all of Firefly in preparation for this, and I am super psyched to get back to just. I love getting to try a new system too. I've never played this one, and it's an interesting one, and I've already done 2 full remakes of the character concept, and I've got I'm really excited to see what everyone else here has so that I can finalize some things, because I love bouncing ideas off everybody else. So excited for a session 0.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Campaigns need a session 0 in my opinion. Even mini campaigns like this, it's so crucial, especially with when you're building a crew or a tight knit group. It's really helpful to have that kind of cohesion in the beginning. Yeah, and though there are character names on the overlay, those are absolutely open for change. So if you need to change a character name or character concept or whatever, please don't feel concreted in by what's on the screen. All right, next we have, although brand new to the channel, I'm very excited to have Carrie on.
Hello, I'm Carrie. Thank you for having me. I am in a whole bunch of other things. The most frequent one I play over on Jake's channel, Mini Terrain Domain. On Monday nights, we play the Candlekeep Mysteries. That's always a good time. That is, we're just ramping up our new season, kind of. We run books. So our new book is coming up, which is pretty exciting. I play on Big Bearded Nerd once a month, though this coming will be the last time we play on the 9th of March, Wednesday. And then just about every other week, I play over on Emporium of the Wayward Gamer. We play Saltmarsh Legends, which is a D&D campaign, and that is a lot of fun too.
Yeah, both Dwight and Jay are really good people. The Jake guy,
Yes.
he's okay, but
They're pretty. I mean,
those
they're
other
you
two
know,
guys,
yeah,
they're-
they are what they are. Let's just leave it at that.
Both all very good dungeon masters in their own right as well.
100%.
I love
100%.
playing. Welcome to the channel. Super excited to have you in a game and to have you a part of the crew. And
Thank
last but certainly not least, we have Jake.
Hey everybody, it's Jake from Mini Terrain Domain, recently described as an unskippable YouTube ad. I am super stoked
Wow.
to be here. That was a little Easter egg for Lloyd there. I fully embraced
Brutal.
it. It's on my business card now. As Carrie mentioned, I run Scribes and Scrolls, the Candlekeep Mysteries on Monday nights over on Mini Terrain Domain Twitch. You can also find Jeremy over there on Thursdays in our long-running Dawnbringers campaign. We just started our season 6, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, recently. We've got a lot of other great stuff going on there. In fact, Carrie mentioned the Saltmarsh Legends on Wayward of the Emporium Gamer. On my channel on every other Tuesday is the opposite game of that, called Legends of Saltmarsh, that Jay runs, that takes place 100 years before the game that Carrie's in on hers. So lots of cool stuff going on. And it's always a pleasure to be here on this channel with this amazing GM and back with all of this wonderful group, and looking forward to playing with you in this group as well, Carrie.
Thank you.
Excellent. Okay. So, like I said, anybody that mentioned a link, you should be able to find it down below. Please do take the time to go check them out. I'm super stoked to have all of you as players, and I'm really, really excited about this game. So, I think without further ado, let's go ahead and get things started. So obviously, going over the social contract in the beginning, honor system, whether you want to roll digital dice or physical dice, it doesn't really matter to me. Just, you're on the honor system. Be honest. Don't cheat. When you're not talking, if you'll mute, just so that way it cuts down on, background noise and that kind of stuff. Taking turns, shining the light on others, passing the spotlight around, all that kind of stuff that I know most of you are very proficient at. Just wanted to point it out here in the beginning, just to encourage it. We have 2 safety tools that we're going to be using throughout the course of this game, and those are the red light, green light system. So for those who are unfamiliar, while we're playing, if at any time any of you as players feel uncomfortable with something, you can type or say red light, and we will immediately put a stop to whatever's going on, fade to black, and move on to something else. Likewise, if something is becoming uncomfortable, you can type or say yellow light. Same thing, we'll kind of pump the brakes, cool off a little bit on it, and make sure that we're not going any deeper into whatever it is that might be causing the issue. No questions asked, no explanations necessary. And occasionally I will check in with all of you if I think that something might be kind of pushing the boundaries a bit. And if you're okay, just say green light. If you're not, follow what I've already said, and it should be just fine. The other safety tool that we're going to be using is lines and veils. I've put that in our document that we have, and that basically is anything that you don't want to be a part of the game, hard, fast, stop, you don't even want it mentioned, that should fall into the veil or lines category. It will not be touched on, it won't be mentioned. Anything that you are cautious about, that you would rather not be the focus, but you're okay with it being at least mentioned or kind of brushing up against that, that would go under the veils section. And likewise, put what you need underneath there. And if we get into it and you realize that even though something wasn't on that list, that it is still bothering you, then that's why we'll fall back on the red light, green light system. So before we move on from that, does anybody have any kinds of questions or concerns dealing with the safety tools? No? Excellent. Cool. In addition, on the doc, I also included the cope list, which is the commonalities of player expectations, and that's kind of the opposite of the lines and veils. It's the things that you would like to see or experience, whether it's spaceship combat or, riding horses or, gunfight, whatever. You can put that in there, and basically every time that gets another mention from someone else, it basically just aggregates to the top of the list, and the more entries, the more hits that a certain aspect or element gets, the more likely it is to be featured in the game. So hopefully I'm able to deliver what you're looking for. So please do take the time to fill that out, and it should be golden. Okay, as I said, we're going to be using Cortex Prime for this game. This is a game that is new to everybody here, unless I'm mistaken, and it is also, like I said, new to me. The book is absolutely beautiful, and this role-playing game is very unique to anything else that I've ever played or run, because it's kind of more akin to a box of Lego. You choose which pieces of it you want to use and which you don't, and you can kind of build a specific tone and genre from those building blocks. And the build that we're going to be using for this particular game is one that I put together based on my very limited knowledge of the game. So hopefully things don't fall apart like a cheaply made Lego house, but we'll see. So let's see what else here. While we're going through this, if at any point any of you have questions about the system that just doesn't make sense to you or you want better explained, please don't hesitate to ask. We're all learning this together, and I want this game to not only be a fun, entertaining piece of media, but also to be a lesson as to how to play. So that's all perfectly cool. As I mentioned before we went live, the sessions of Cortex are kind of meant to feel like episodes of a television show. So there will be probably a lot of discussion about like what scene we're going to do next and like what purpose that scene might be trying to achieve and things of that. So just be aware that that's going to be the case. Yeah. So before we roll into characters and who you'll be playing, does anybody have any questions so far about Cortex or its implementation here? No? Cool. All right, so then I guess let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty. Let's see if I can make this look as smooth as possible. Okay. So this is our doc that I put together so that you can all see what we're looking at as far as the build for the actual game. This was very much meant for the players, but I think it gives a pretty good overview of the way Cortex is supposed to work. I'm hoping, at least. And this is a document that I'll reference a lot whenever we are playing. This will kind of be your handbook, so to speak. But the first thing that we're going to be touching on is going to be distinctions. So the basic premise of Cortex is every conflict is resolved with a dice pool roll that you'll assemble based on the situation, the scene that you're in, and the way that your character is approaching a given conflict. And you'll build your dice pool based on trait sets, typically. And of the trait sets that we have in this game, I think there are 5, maybe 6, but 3 of them are called your prime trait sets. Distinctions are one of those. So a distinction is always going to have a D8 as its rating. So anytime that you call upon that distinction, you're going to add a D8 to your dice pool when you're rolling against that conflict. So distinctions are going to come in 3 different flavors, essentially, for each of your characters. And each of those is going to be determined by how you want to answer these 3 questions. The first of which is, where in the verse are you from? Kind of refers to your past. It doesn't have to be a specific place or planet. It's just things like, if you were playing a companion, it might be the Companion Academy, something to that effect. For an example sheet that I put together for Malcolm Reynolds, his answer to the question is Browncoat who survived Serenity Valley, because it's kind of a defining aspect of the character's past, and it informs a lot about what happens later on to them. The second question is going to be, why do you sail the black? It's going to refer more to your present, kind of what motivates you, what gets you out of bed in the morning. For Malcolm, I used the answer, stick it to the Alliance. It's kind of his defining core value, is everywhere he can turn, it's about getting back at the man, so to speak. And the third question is, how do you want to die? This refers more towards your future and kind of informs your character's general approach to living life. How willing you are to take risks, how cautious you are, those kinds of things. Again, going back to the one that I put together for Malcolm Reynolds, his answer to that question is with my gun in my hand. Because it doesn't matter how he's going to die to Mal as long as he's fighting. And it's very much defines a lot of the way that he approaches things throughout the television series and the movie. So, with that in mind, does anybody have any specific answers for their characters for distinctions? And while you're at it, since this is the first time that you guys are hopping, pardon the dogs, will be tell us who you're going to play. You can describe anything about them that you want to tell us, and then let us know how you're planning on maybe answering these questions.
So I can go. I guess as far as where in the verse am I from, Lily is kind of from all over the place. As long as she can remember, she's been flying around. Her parents were both mechanics, who just kind of jumped from ship to ship as they found work. So she kind of isn't from anywhere. So that's kind of what I wrote, is just all over. That's about it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
On that one.
Very. The term worldly, I guess, wouldn't really apply in a sci-fi setting where there's multiple worlds, but yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think I get what you're going for.
Yep.
Cool.
So for Silas, I have a ganger who got out of a dark undercity and turned his skills to hunting men. Something like that. So I figure he was on like some heavily oppressive Alliance world where there's like a lot of crime in the undercity, and he would have grown up there, got off world and was like, oh, I have this skill set where I can like find and hurt people, and turned that to a lucrative job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if I'm remembering right, Capital City is the name of like the big, hyper metropolis type place in Firefly. I think that's where Simon was a doctor. So it's like a super city.
Yeah, so one of those, except like nowhere, like wouldn't have seen the sky, I guess,
Oh, okay, sure.
Like way down underneath piles and piles and piles of giant buildings. I would imagine, where they don't look, where the Alliance isn't bothered to go that far deep. There's like, copious crime and sort of underworld sort of stuff. And he would be from there, I think.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, that's great.
So I think if Lloyd's character was at like the very, very bottom of the Undercity, my character would probably be like in the middle. So like the basically the higher end of the Undercity, instead, playing Arthur Vandross, or some people might just call him Van. The basic idea is that he was like a hitman or a spy, depending on kind of what fits the group needs more in terms of skill set, for like a well-connected crime organization. And I don't want to say like he's reformed as like a better person. He's reformed in the sense that he was a completely cold, murderous shithead and is now just a real bastard of a person instead. So better, but not good in that sense. And he's trying to basically find his own agency. He's been like a pure tool for like the crime organization that had sway over him, to do like just exactly what they said, follow their word to the letter. And he wants to find his own sense of himself and perhaps sorry, the chat got me. Yeah, find some purpose basically for himself and to potentially experience human connection instead of just being all business.
Excellent. Yeah, and a lot of distinctions. It reminds me a lot of the way you do Fate Accelerated. I think it's called Aspects in Fate. It's very similar to that because like you want to kind of take a concept and kind of condense it into a phrase that you can reference when you're invoking it or whatever. So while you're kind of coming up with these concepts for your character, with the answers to these questions, try to think of a way that you can kind of distill it down into a referenceable term.
Okay. I have an idea. So what I was thinking for, I'm not sure on the name still. So Quinn Thorne is what I have at the moment. Might become Quinn Richmond. Might become Thomas Richmond. Might become something completely different. But I'm just gonna call him Quinn for now. Quinn was either a combat medic or a pilot with the Alliance, who did not like what he was ordered to do or not do on occasion. If he's it kind of depends on the group needs again. So if he was a medic, he just didn't like being ordered not to help and being ordered to do certain things. But so he deserted to fly the black and is now kind of questioning that choice. Like, you know, supported unification, but not the methods necessarily. And is now like kind of out in the shit, trying to figure out if it was worth it.
Excellent. Yeah, I like how all of you, again, you've already got a really clear distinction in your mind about who your character is kind of going to be. And that's a really good thing to approach a system like Cortex with, because a lot of the decisions that you make about where you're going to put all of these different die values is all based on kind of what you're feeling the character and the way that you want them to come across. And so having a really good idea of that ahead of time before you start applying the mechanics is a much better way, I think, to build a Cortex problem as opposed, or a Cortex character as opposed to like a Dungeons and Dragons character.
Scoot McDuff is, I've pitched him up to this point as a teenager, but the more we flesh these out, I'm willing to kind of adjust that accordingly. In my mind right now, he's somewhere between 15 and 18, but the idea is that he's sort of the youngest person around. I've described him as a sneaky talker who's full of joy. He's a happy-go-lucky dude who talks a lot about anything and nothing, and but he's also really sneaky. So I took the "where in the verse are you from" distinction as he's grown up his entire life basically as a street kid, but exclusively around spaceports. So he's sort of the spaceport footpad on the Dodge. He's a sneak thief, cut purse, just always dodging trying to dodge the authorities, but he sticks around spaceports because that's where the most diverse group of people that are either coming or going. So they're not people that can easily latch on and recognize his face. And he's just as quick to jump on a ship and move to another planet completely. But with mostly the purpose being while he's on the ship to see what he can steal in terms of food and keep himself fed and ideally, and what I imagine he's kind of done with this group is ingratiate himself into the group. Maybe was caught by the captain and given leniency or something. I don't know. But he's just that kid that just started hanging around. Nobody knows where he came from. And he's just always been there. And if you need somebody to get into tight spaces or do something, he's kind of expendable, I think, too, in that way. You know, that if you don't care if somebody's going to get caught, send Scoot to do it.
It's awesome. I'm getting very much kind of Jim Hawkins from Treasure Island kind of vibes.
Yeah.
Already, which is really cool. But with a little bit more of
specifically the animated Treasure Island. I just got to point that specifically that
Treasure Planet is so good. And it fits Firefly really well, actually. I might have to look into it.
I'm thinking I might.
I'm just gonna picture the rest of the crew as Muppets, actually. But
let's be honest, we know that's the case.
Can I be
Big,
Tim Curry,
ugly, butt-faced baby eating O'Brien?
Really dead, Tom.
I'm thinking I might change my "Where am I from" to rich instead of poor, because we have a lot of people who have no home, no connections, no family, and I think maybe how did we get a ship?
Right.
And how did we get started on anything? And I think like rich playboy turned bounty hunter after a betrayal works just as well.
Ooh,
So maybe he was like disowned or something. But I think it's nice to have someone who can like speak to high society, I think, you know, because we don't have
certainly
much of that.
Okay. Yeah, that's perfect.
Are you saying he's like a dude that was like in service to a noble family and was turned loose, or he was the nobility?
He was the nobility. And this is it's all sort of just coming to me, but I think he might have been like, you know, second or third son or something, trained in whatever special combat. Maybe there's an assassin's guild or something that like rich dudes get into, or like whatever, some sort of special training, and you know, lots of ambition in the family, and maybe he like offed one of his brothers to get closer to the top, and then he was blackmailed and removed from the like disowned or whatever, and found himself suddenly with nothing. I think something like that could be interesting.
Yeah, hell yeah, that's really cool. So the way that distinctions work in the game is, like I said, each of them is valued as a D8. And anytime that you think that it would rely on one of these three answers, you call upon that, essentially. You're going to use that in building your dice pool. But the really interesting thing about distinctions is that they come with three things that are called special effects. It's truncated to SFX in the document. But the first of those threes is always to choose to hinder yourself on a roll. And what that means is, instead of applying your D8, you're going to apply a D4 in its place. And that's when you're using that distinction as a detriment to yourself in the scene. Because taking Silas's, build that you're talking about, maybe you get into a situation and you realize one of your family members is involved. So now all of a sudden you want that distinction to play against you, in a role-playing sense. So you can make that choice as a player. And when you do make that choice, I give you a plot point, which you can spend later for a variety of different things in the game system. The other two special effects that will fall under each of these specific distinctions are going to be things that you're going to build, and I can help you negotiate what that's going to be. But it's a heavily mechanic thing that relies on that distinction. That's going to be circumstantial, and at the beginning of the game, these two special effects will be locked, and essentially between each session you'll unlock one of them. And then so the final session, you'll have access to all 3 of them. Just to give it a further example for the build that I put together for Malcolm Reynolds, under Browncoat, who survived Serenity Value, he has the Hinder, but then he also has the 2 special effects are, I can spend a plot point to step down a stress die from a non-physical source. He's used to kind of like bottling up his emotions because of what he's been through, and so anytime that he would gain stress from something that's not physical to his body, he has an ability to kind of get control of it, to suppress it. His other special effect is, if I create a D8 complication that's connected to my past, I can re-roll a single die. So that gives, the theoretical player of the character a benefit for complicating things in a scene because of the multitude of connections that Malcolm Reynolds has within the world of Firefly. So those are examples of the kinds of special effects that you'll be able to build for these distinctions. And we'll get into that later before we actually play the first session, because obviously, the rules are very fresh for everybody, and that's going to take some manipulation of an understanding of the rules in order to choose those. So for now, we know kind of where in the verse that you're from. We've kind of gone over that. And all of you are going to be working on kind of boiling that down to a definable distinction that you can list on your sheet. The second question that I want to go through for everybody is, why do you sail the black? Some of you have kind of answered that question a little bit based on kind of where you've come from, but what is it that keeps you out here? Why do you stay out here instead of settling somewhere? What is it that motivates you on a day-to-day basis?
I went first last time. We might as well keep the same batting order, boys. I guess I have just been kind of refining this as we've been sitting here. I'm trying to keep my answers to 2 words just as a challenge to myself. Why do you sail the black? For Lily, it's to escape. We're going to learn, I don't know if it's going to be today or throughout the story, but Lily has some pretty significant shit in her past. And for her, staying out here and keeping focused on her work, she's gonna, I kind of see Lily as sort of a mechanic, like a very, very support character, to kind of keep the ship running and just kind of to keep going, both in a literal and a figurative sense, just to kind of prove that she can keep going is as much of a goal as she kind of needs.
Yeah, I wrote for my second distinction to find my own agency instead of being a tool for others. Essentially, he's sick of taking orders. He wants to have his own life, his own experiences that he can sort of self-direct. And even if you settle down somewhere, you're probably still going to be like an employee for someone else who's still telling you what to do. So it's out of the crime game, but not out of the taking orders game. So I think this sort of setting would be his sort of ideal self-exploratory tool.
I have to work towards getting back what's mine, which I think is pretty self-explanatory. Like he thinks he deserves to be in charge of that house or of that family. I'm sort of thinking, if you've ever seen what is it, Stardust, where there's like 10 brothers and they're all killing each other all the time. Like, it's sort of probably a little bit like that. Like, there was tons of them and now there's like maybe 3 or 4 left. Or maybe there's just one and that's the one who's like in charge now. And but that kind of thing, like there was a lot of them, and like maybe sort of like fraternal or like sibling murder is like a little bit accepted on his homeworld, in a sort of like, well, we'll just have tons of them and then we'll see who wins.
Austin, Jake, either one of you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's partially. I think I kind of have. Oh man, this is tough because I kind of have 2 that I'm struggling between at the moment, which is either like,
What you got?
to find out if giving up everything was worth it, like if the people out in the black deserve it, like because he gave up basically his life to desert, or and this might be more of a goal, is to like earn enough to like buy a new identity and like get back to the inner worlds. It's like his goal is eventually like he'd like to, settle back down on an inner planet if possible. But right now, probably not very possible as a deserter. So I think it's really just to find out if it was worth it, though. That's really the reason he's out sailing right now. Like the end goal is different.
Yeah, and you can probably apply the second choice that you had to the third question. How do you want to die? If he's wanting to settle down somewhere, it's maybe it's old and in bed.
It's quietly, exactly.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And that'll definitely kind of inform some of the choices that your character will make getting there. Okay, cool.
I distilled Why Do You Sail the Black down to Ain't No Crowds. Scoot spends all of his time on these spaceports, and he's not the only cut purse and shyster and what have you. He's amongst all these others competing for marks and often competing for food and survival. And when he gets onto a ship and actually gets out into space, he doesn't have to compete with anybody. He's just got to look out for himself and pay attention to the handful of, whoever's on the ship that he's snuck onto. And it's just realizing that it's somebody who grew up in the city suddenly going out to the countryside and seeing there's such a thing as fresh air and you can move around and not be elbow to elbow with people all the time.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
It would be great if there was a part of the ship, like a main thoroughfare on the ship that's like super tight. There you have to like squish by, just as like a sort of like he's felt it, he's finally free. We don't have to, and then it's like this one little part of the ship where every time, excuse me, sorry, just got it.
Yeah, the narrows.
Yep.
So that takes care of the second question. Why do you sail the black? The third distinction that you might call on is how do you want to die? And this, like I said, kind of depicts the way that your character makes choices based on the way they see their future going or how they want their future to go. So let's go around the horn and talk about that final aspect, and then we can move on to our other trait sets.
Keeping with the 2-word theme, I just have somewhere green on here. Lily her parents would have told her, is from a deep Irish lineage. And they always talk about Ireland, even though they have never been there themselves, as like the ultimate like peaceful place. And ultimately, again, in both a literal and a figurative sense, Lily wants to find calm and to ultimately settle down on a planet where there is lush greenery. It's a very simple goal.
That's perfect. Yeah. And especially in the world of Firefly, because the way that they refer to Earth is the Earth that was. So like it's either lost or nobody really knows how or where it is anymore. So I think definitely things like, Ireland would have that kind of mythical quality kind of stacked on top of it. That sounds amazing, especially to people where life is so harsh and so hard. And for somebody who's grown up in space stations and on ships, a planet that is covered in greenery would be, again, it would be mythical.
I've got triumphant and smiling as mine.
I've got outsmarted with a knife in my back as mine. I don't want it to be some grand blaze of glory or a peaceful, quiet settling down. Like I just want some shitty backwards person to knife me in my sleep or something like that.
That's wonderful.
I got old and comfortable.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's really good.
I don't. Who the hell wants to die? I want to live forever.
Excellent. It's a great answer too. Absolutely. Okay, cool. So like I said, we'll work between now and session 1 on kind of coming up with what special effects kind of would best fit these distinctions, so that you can have those written down on your character sheet and work towards portraying those in the game and all that kind of stuff. Let's head back over to the document. We're going to move on down to emotions. Now, emotions is not technically a part of the Cortex Prime RPG system, but this is based on an article that I found that someone had written about adding your own trait sets into Cortex. See if I can scroll this up so that we can actually see it a bit. We'll scroll as we go. And this is largely based on the Pixar movie Inside Out. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that or not, but it's a wonderful film, but it uses a lot of actual like models from psychology about breaking down human emotions into distinct groups. This one does add an emotion into the mix so that there's kind of an even number, but those emotions are anger, desire, disgust, fear, joy, and sadness. Between these 6 emotions, you're each going to assign a D10 to one of them, a D8 to 2 different ones, and then 3 D6 to the rest of them, or rather a D6 to the rest of them. And the way that emotions are going to work in the game is a little counterintuitive. So normally you would think that you would put whichever emotion impacts you the greatest as your highest, but it's actually kind of the opposite. This is going to represent how in control of each of those emotions that your character tends to be, or how well that they are able to kind of use those particular emotions and still to kind of gain control and perform, even though they're feeling that emotion, or how they might be able to kind of leverage that emotion in a given scene to their advantage. It's not
so
really
the higher.
Go
I
ahead,
apologize.
please. No, please.
The higher the number, the more control the character has over that.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, got it.
So,
Yes.
Again, for those who are familiar with the show, for Malcolm, the way I broke it down for him was he has a D10 in fear because he has a admirable control over his own fear, and also he leverages fear against other people often. He's very kind of one of those people that will get in your personal space and loom over you and try to intimidate you into doing what he wants. So fear is a D10 for him, and then anger and joy are both D8s, and then the D6s are desire, disgust, and sadness. Those emotions on the bottom tend to gain control over him more than the others. So that's kind of what you're going to be building, looking for. You want to try to think of it not really as your character adding your own emotion to any given scene, but instead how you as a player are going to help guide any particular scene or moment kind of into that type of an emotional direction, if that makes sense. So does anybody want to touch on what they think that how their character might break down given emotions?
Yeah, sure. I put some thought into this because so this is I'm still not again not sure entirely. Like I've got two. I basically broke this down into 2 different versions. I did one that's a pilot and one that's a medic. So I'm still not really sure what we're gonna need like crew wise. I'm going with the medic one for now because I have the other one all broken down too. But this one, so for him it would be D10 would be disgust. He was used to doing some nasty things on the battlefield and it doesn't really bother him, and he's able to kind of use his medical knowledge to kind of gross people out if he needs to. And then fear and sadness would be his D8s, and then anger, desire, and joy are his D6s. Those are all a little bit more able to kind of grasp him.
So I've got desire as a D6 because I think that Silas wants what he wants very strongly, and when he sees an opportunity to get it, is less capable of controlling that. Joy and sadness are the D8s, because I think he's like stable and capable of controlling that part of his psyche pretty well. And then fear as a D10, he will do whatever it takes, and will, a bit like you were describing with Mal, like that he will like use fear to get what he wants, but also is able to control his own.
So for me, for my 10, I'm actually going to go with sadness. I think like just given his past and his line of work, he's just so used to compartmentalizing being in terrible situations all the time that like it's no longer something that like his own like this sucks like sensor is all wrong because of like how he's had to live his life. So he just doesn't have a sense of like what that is even like. I have disgust and fear as my 8s. Again, just in his line of work, I imagine that you have to go through a lot, and you're kind of in control of that in a sense, which leaves anger, desire, and joy as his 6s, which I think those are all the emotions he hasn't been allowed to experience before, which I think will include some vulnerability with them of like the first time that he experiences like real joy. That's going to be like, I think, very confusing to someone who hasn't like really gone through that, and perhaps will like leave him vulnerable in a way. And same with like anger and desire. Like now that I want things, I might not get my way, and like how will I react when that happens, and so on.
I've at least nailed down my 10, and then my at least 2 of my 6s. The other ones I'm still kind of working on. I think fear is my 10, just because there's not a ton in civilized space that can freak Lily out at this point. And then for 2 of my 6s is anger and joy, because that's just not something Lily is great at controlling, and who knows why, but it's just kind of pretty an emotional person. Emotions kind of on her sleeves.
I went with D10 for sadness. I see that as being something that probably maybe the only thing he holds on to from what he remembers of his mother was just to find joy in whatever circumstance he's in, and to not waste, but also, it has the caveat of to not waste time being sad or crying over things. Because while it's admirable to, not waste time and be sad, also it makes you vulnerable and weak and prone to make mistakes. So I think he has control over that. The D8s are disgust and anger. Disgust, he's seen a lot of sketchy things in his life and living situations. And he's just not a person that anger is an emotion that controls him. D6's desire, fear, and joy, I think he doesn't have control over it. I see him as just naturally being sort of the upbeat personality. But also with fear, if you're going to be a sneak thief and you're going to be able to dodge people and sneak on the ships, you have to embrace that fear, know that it's there and it's a part of doing what you're doing. And desire as well, his desire to get out of any given situation, or just to sometimes just to steal something to see if you can do it. I kind of see it as maybe that's how he got into the whole thieving thing, is he saw something and was like, I wonder if I can take that, and he could. So he just started challenging himself.
Awesome. Yeah, I love the way that Cortex goes about building characters this way. It's just so much fun to slowly kind of discover what the right answer is, to say, oh no, I definitely think that this is the reason for this choice, and it all feels supported. So all of the mechanics feel like they have a solid foundation in who the character is, as opposed to the character having a foundation in the mechanics, which is really interesting. Okay, we're going to slide back over to the dock here, and we're going to move on down to our last prime trait set, which is going to be rolls. So this is the trickiest one that I have found describing to people who are used to playing Dungeons and Dragons, because this is the closest thing to having a class. But your character is a little bit of each of these things, and you're just going to determine how much of each they are. So similar to what we just did with emotions, you're going to assign a D10, a single D8, 3 D6s, and then finally 1 D4 to each of the following 6 approaches, categories, roles. And the roles are fixer. Whether it's people or machines, this covers the know-how to put and tools to put things right. Heavy. Some situations just need a bit of muscle or the threat of violence. Hotshot. When the pressure is turned up or eyes are on them, it draws the best out of some folks. Sneak. There are moments when the less attention you draw to yourself, the better. Talker. This is about knowing what to say, how to say, and when to say it. And thinker. Sometimes having a big brain pan is the best tool for any situation. So again, if you would we'll just go around and everybody tell me kind of what you've chosen for your character or kind of what direction you might be leaning in.
I've got my setup.
Is the fixer. Yeah,
Go ahead.
I'm done too. I raced you. I got 10 is fixer. That makes sense. My 4 is sneak. Not a super light-footed person. My 3 6s are heavy talker and thinker, and my 8 is hotshot. Just cause.
Silas is hotshot first, and then sneak. And the D4 is fixer, so the others are the D6s. I figure he's like not mechanically minded. That's like poor person work. He wouldn't have learned it growing up. He would have learned how to hurt people and how to be sneaky. I actually almost put talker as my D8, but I think he spent more time now bounty hunting than he spent doing the other thing, and I feel like sneak is an essential part of that. But what I really like is that all of them are like interesting options. Like there's none of them that I was like, well, I don't really want this one at all, which is cool. A cool way to make a class.
So I've got my 4 is also going to be my fixer. I'm the breaker, not the fixer. That's other people. For my D6s, I have hotshot, sneak, and talker. 8 for thinker, and then 10 for heavy. I'm the one who's going to be in there wreaking some havoc if we need it.
I went with D10 for sneak, and I was gonna go D8 for talker, but it's the knowing what to say, how to say it, and particularly the when to say it. Scoot is less of a TED talk and more of an unskippable YouTube ad. So he's the talker in the sense that he's the one you're always telling to shut up, probably. So yeah, that's a D6. The D4 heavy. Scoot's a scrawny kid. He's not doing anything heavy. So yeah, D10 in sneak, and I put the D8 in the hot shot because that's where he thrives. When the pressure's on to steal a thing or sneak into a place, that's where he's really going to shine. With the fixer and thinker are the other D6s.
All right.
I actually
Awesome.
really like that a lot of people have good hotshot skills because it feels like when the chips are down, the crew is just like, all right, let's do it, guys.
Yep, I'm noticing that, which will be good. I'll probably try to lean into that.
Sure.
Yeah. Well, shoot. Now I'm like, listening to everyone else's, I'm like, oh no, I feel like I kind of have exactly the same as I think at least one other person. But for the medic version I have is D10 fixer, D8 hotshot, D6 sneak, talker, and thinker. and D4 heavy, where he's really all about doing his job and doing it well.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing to think about though, Austin, is like if you said is this your medic side?
It's true. They are focused on different areas.
It's a different flavor of
Absolutely.
Fixer. So like that's
true.
the flexibility of the system.
The only other thing I'm thinking is I don't know if we have anyone that seems to be kind of fitting a pilot archetype yet, and I feel like that might be more useful to us than a medic necessarily, based on I don't know exactly how the system's going to deal with that kind of thing, but I think it I don't know. I'm leaning towards the pilot angle more. Yeah. Again, I already have all these like statted out, so it's not going to be a big.
I feel like you could. I mean, apply like the genius thing about games like this, where you don't have like specific skills, but you have like dice pools. Is that like you decide how you're flying the ship, and that's the skill you're using, right? Like, so you can heavy fly the ship, or you can thinker fly the ship. Like depending on how you flavor it, I guess. And I think Fixer works for that too, right? Like it's really just like you just got to twist it to fit your concept, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And essentially, like the way that it'll come up is if nobody chooses to play a pilot, then I'll probably just put it in an NPC pilot, and there won't be any like scenes that heavily focus on the piloting of the ship. Essentially, it'll just kind of steer us in a slightly different direction. But if one of you wants to play the pilot, then more than likely there will be some sort of like pilot challenge scene that's worked into what we're going to do through the course of the campaign. But with that being said, also, you could play a medic pilot if you really wanted to, and just find a good balance that satisfies you between both. I'm sure that the Alliance or that the Browncoats, if you wanted to go that direction, had a lot of people that did that kind of thing. They literally would fly in, try to do medic things, and then get people out of there.
Yeah, Alliance, but yeah.
Oh, Alliance, yep.
So. Yeah, X-Alliance. I like the idea of going X-Alliance just because I figure there's probably not a lot of love for the Alliance in this crew, and it'll be interesting. Okay, I think I will do that then. So I'll stick with what I got. I got Fixer and Hotshot in that order, so I'll stick with them like that.
Cool. Awesome. Okay. So with distinctions, emotions, and roles, those are your 3 prime trait sets. Basically, any roll that you're going to make at any point during the game is going to have dice that are generated from at least those 3. That's where you're going to go first to make your decisions about basically the first 3 dice you're going to use in your dice pool are going to be. Like I said, with distinctions, it's always a D8, and then whichever role and emotion that you choose, you're going to grab the dice that's associated with those and bring that into your dice pool. Now, there are additional trait sets that we're going to now go over, and the first of which is relationships. Now, this is going to get a little, not tricky, but it's going to take a little bit of a deep dive. So, relationships are an essential part of Firefly, in my opinion. So many of the conflicts and decisions in the show boil down to the connection that someone has in a scene with a given other character or organization. They're almost all driven by those kinds of relationships. So I wanted to make sure to include it in this build, but it's not always something that is going to come up. So not every role that you have is going to hang on a relationship. So the way that relationships are going to work in this game is that during the course of the game, at any point, if you think your character would have a relationship with an NPC that is introduced or with an organization that you can dream up, then you can do so. You can create that in the moment. All you have to do is spend one of your plot points, and that relationship is then on your sheet at a D6. It's only going to last for the remainder of the session, unless you then spend some of your growth points between sessions to make that a permanent relationship, to establish it as a permanent relationship. You can spend plot points when you're establishing these relationships to either step up that D6 to like a D8 or 2 points for a D10, And yes, but here in the beginning, one of the things that I would like for all of you to do is and we can wait until the first session to finalize this if you want, but you're going to choose at least a relationship die for each of the other crew members. You're just going to choose what it is. You can choose whether it's a D12, like the best ever, you would die for one another kind of thing, or if it's a D4 where you just do not get along with one another, and whatever in between. And those things will be able to fluctuate and change as we play, but at least have a one for each of the other PCs in the beginning. Each of the relationships are also going to include 2 special effects of their own. The first of which is if a character or group that you have an established relationship with is involved in a given role, you can add your relationship die to the dice pool before you roll it. So if your emotion die for the role that you're already bringing to that dice pool matches the assigned emotion of the relationship that you have chosen, then you get to double your relationship die instead. Does that make sense? It's a little weird, but so like if if we've kind of talked about the fact that Silas and Lily might not exactly get along. If, for example, Lily decides that she has a D4 relationship die with Silas, and it does not have to be the same, by the way. That both of you don't have to have a D4. It can be whatever.
I have a D4. I have a D4. Rest assured.
Perfect. Okay, so say that you're going to be doing something, and in that scene, you're already going to be dealing with Silas for this particular role. So you're going to bring that D4 to the role, but in addition, you're going to assign an emotion to the relationship that you have with Silas. So if you're also dealing with disgust in that particular role, and disgust happens to be the thing that colors your relationship with Silas, then you're going to roll 2d4 instead. That makes sense?
Okay, cool.
Okay, cool. Awesome.
All right, I get that. I get that. That makes sense.
Yeah. The second bullet point for relationship, the second special effects, is that I, as the GM, will be able to activate your relationship for a given role if I wish to. But in order to do so, I will have to give you a plot point in exchange. But when I do that, it's going to create a complication that is equal to that relationship's die. So if one of you has, talking about, I just lost your name. Damn it. Your character's name. Quinn. If Quinn has a beef with browncoats, and this situation is going to be dealing with browncoats, then I might call on your relationship. And if it's a D10, now that's a D10 complication that's going to be added to the scene, because your character has that sordid past, that sordid, strong relationship already established. Does anybody have any questions about how that's going to work?
So our relationships start at D6, is that right? Or
so during the course of the game, any relationship that you will establish midstream, will start as a D6, and then you can choose to step it up with plot points.
So right now we're going to make a relationship with each other player, and that starts at D4.
No, it starts at whatever you want it to.
Okay.
Whatever you think fits. But that'll be the only time that you get that luxury. It's to, if you want to slap a D12 in something, now's the time to do it. But that is again, D12 would be the best you can have, essentially. So that would be the, we're going to go down back to back kind of thing.
So what would you say would represent kind of like an average relationship? What would that be, a D6, you think? Or
D6.
D8?
Yeah, like a D6 would be a person that you're more indifferent towards. And then a D8 would probably be somebody that you're friendly with. And then a D10 is somebody that's a really good friend. And then D12, like I said, is, the people you go down for.
Okay.
And this doesn't matter if I assign a D10 to somebody, they can assign a D4 to my character.
Absolutely.
That would be very perfect if all of yours were D10s and everybody else's for you were D4s.
Yep. It is very much possible.
Quinn is educated, right? And smart and proper and like maybe wealthy.
Yeah,
or previously wealthy.
Yeah, I think he probably was doing pretty all right, and like he learned, and like he was not he was not an enlisted. He was probably like went through some, at least some like higher level training.
Okay, and has read some like highfalutin books and listens to popular music, or like,
yeah, I would think so. I would think that he's
okay.
he's like a fully like core worlds, like
Gotcha.
upper middle
Okay.
class kind of guy.
Okay.
That
Cool. I think that's going to put at least Silas liking Quinn, because it's like, oh, I have something in common here with this person.
Sure.
Because I think he's already like very far removed. Like he was very, very wealthy, and now is like not. And so all of his frames of reference are like, like they don't really relate to like strays and stowaways and stuff. He's like has no connection, sort of there.
Yeah, same. Any like anything that reminds him of civilization is an automatic. Like he automatically likes Quinn's on board with. Yeah, he probably would like Silas for the same reason.
I see both Silas and Van representing the nobility and oppressive or oppression to one degree or another. So I see those being very weak relationships in Scoot's eyes. The question of who Scoot values the most would depend on, I see it either being Quinn or Lily as having key roles on the ship, either the captain, who, ultimate authority, if Quinn is indeed the captain of the ship, because somebody either gave him leniency, and ultimately let him stay on the ship, or convinced the captain. So I don't know which of the two of you that would be. So like Quinn, if you're let's say you are the captain, I don't know if that decision's made yet. Would you have been the one to allow Scoot to stay on, or would you have had to have been convinced and maybe you're reluctantly allowing him to stay on the ship?
My feeling, just gut feeling, is that Quinn would kind of just like Scoot. Like he would have like kind of the like a nephew like affection for him. Like this young man like has like potential and could be useful to us, and like I think he would be on board with keeping Scoot.
And like we talked about earlier with the pilot choice, like as far as who the captain is going to be, that is totally up in the air. If one of you feels like your character fits the role, then absolutely you can be so. If nobody wants to do it, then I'll just have an NPC who fulfills that role in the game, and it won't be part of the focus of our story.
Lily, as far as how I already put a 10 down for Scoot. I can tell Lily is going to like Scoot. I think she just sort of sees him, kind of referring back to what Jake said about just sort of like optimism and kind of like more or less just like a kid. She sees that and gravitates towards it kind of subconsciously. And she kind of just likes having him around. He makes her laugh.
Excellent.
So I have, I think, all dice for all the crew members set. I tried to have them all be different. I know that's not required, but just as like my own thing. So I think I'm gonna be the killjoy here. Scoot's my 4, I think, just because if anyone's gonna blow a mission and cause problems, it's gonna be the loud kid. Like, so I think there's just, it's not even that he dislikes you as a person, but just you are the X factor that could cause problems, and that's dangerous. I have a 6 for Quinn. I just think kind of we're both crew members. That's it. An 8 for Silas. I think Van respects your like ambition and sort of self-directedness. There's kind of, I think, a part of you that you already have that he's sort of learning how to create that kind of makes a nice model. And perhaps surprisingly, I have a 10 for Lily. I think she's the person that Van never could have been, but maybe in like another life could be the person who fixes things, the person who's, you know, seeking out peace and comfort. Like he doesn't know what any of those things are. So I think there's kind of a soft spot for this. I mean, not pure, because she's been through some real shit too, but just, you know, the optimism and like the desire to create and to make things better, as opposed to him who's always made things worse. I think there's some like appreciation and some respect for that.
And it sounds like even maybe the trauma that Lily's gone through is somewhat of a binding agent, you know, as well for Van, because there's a little bit of that shared trauma, even if it's not the same kind. You know, it's both of you have come from this, you know, unhealthy, you know, background at some point in your life, in your past.
And there's probably some level of guilt of like the sort of person who caused her trauma is very similar to the sort of person he was and perhaps still is. So I think there's perhaps a bit of his like awakening in terms of like leaving the life that he used to have is like, I've made people who suffered like that, like countless people who have the same sort of damage as her.
So interestingly, then, Carrie, what is your rating for Van? I'm curious to know.
Please be like a 4. Like that would be perfect.
I wrote Van down as a 6, but I think I'm gonna scoot him down to a 4.
Ooh, okay. So yeah,
just it depends. Honestly, that's gonna kind of depend on how Van carries himself around this ship.
Yeah,
like
for sure.
is he like a snooty snoot, or is he gonna be more of like he has done these things obviously, and that's never gonna be far from Lily's mind, but is he ashamed of those things, or is he just kind of like, yep, whatever, I did it? So that's gonna be a determination I think I might need to make later. I don't know, it's between a 4 and a 6.
yeah,
I've
that's
decided to
perfect.
have both Lily and Scoot as D6 because he's sort of just indifferent to them. Like he doesn't dislike either of them, which maybe is worse for Lily because he just doesn't care. So she's like, "Oh, like you're such a piece of shit," and he's like, "Hi, having a good day? Cool, back to work." You know,
Go fuck
like,
yourself.
doesn't care. Like he doesn't have a problem with either of them. He also just like isn't that close with them. I put a 12 for Quinn. I think like Silas is desperate for someone to connect with who has similar experiences to him. And even though, you know, in his previous life, probably he wouldn't have given Quinn the time of day. Now it's like someone who has some frame of reference for the world that they have come from and a sense of like what they've both lost in now like living on this like rackety old ship. Like, and a D8 for Van in a similar sort of sense, as in it's like, you know, Silas has done some not great things as part of work, and he appreciates Van's like work ethic and ability to like focus on the job and get the mission done, because that's something that Silas cares about a lot as well. Yeah, that's my list.
I do have a quick question about
certainly.
these relationships, like especially the ones with the crew members as opposed to like the ones that might be created throughout the game. Are these set, or can we change these as our relationship to the other characters changes? Like if Van and Scoot somehow have like a super bonding moment between the two of them, can I upgrade his dice, or is that like kind of against, like how does the relationships of the crew as they change and as we learn who these people are, like do these numbers have the possibility to change or not?
Yes, absolutely. So between each session, you're going to basically earn almost like XP, and you're going to be able to spend that on different aspects of growth for your character. Let me switch back over here, and I'll jump down to... So after each session, you're going to earn 3 XP. And you can either hold on to those or spend them as you see fit. In the ways that you can spend those are going to be to turn an asset from a session into a signature asset or a permanent relationship. or you can switch out a distinction or a trait statement for a new one. Both of those are 1 point each. You can step up a signature asset or a relationship for 2 XP. And likewise, I would be open for stepping down as well, if you'd like, if it calls for it. And then to step up a role or a value is going to cost you 3 points. And then in addition to being able to spend those points, you're also going to be able to unlock one of the special effects under each of your distinctions, whichever of the 2 that you wish. Okay, does anybody have any other questions? No? Cool. And again, like that can very much be fluid. We can discuss it further in our chat and stuff before session 1, before you kind of nail down all of the dice assignments and things like that to the relationships and all that kind of stuff. But in addition to assigning a die for each of the relationships, you also need to choose an emotion that is going to color that relationship, what that relationship is nested in your character's mind. So that way, again, if the special effect comes up to call upon that relationship and the emotion tied to it, you can possibly gain the benefit or the detriment.
For the crew as well? Assign an emotion for the crew as well, or?
Yes. Yep.
Yep.
For each emotion that you're going to establish for your character, if you could, or for each relationship that you're going to establish, even with the PCs, I would like for it to be nested in an emotion. Okay.
So, yeah, I think for Quinn, Van, I'm going to put it at a D6. He's like, Van is good, or Quinn is generally kind of a what's the like the outward version of likable, like not likable, but like likes people, like, you know, it's like
gregarious.
easy, like easy to like people, like has an easy time liking people. So I think I kind of bumped everyone up a little higher than my initial thoughts. So like Van, I think he sees as a little bit of a necessary evil based on like his what he knows of his past. He's a little wary about him, but he's a little forgiving because he's like, well, I had to do some shit too that I, you know, wasn't proud of, and like we're out here now doing different stuff. Scoot and Lily, I put it at D8, where he's just like, yeah, they're good, solid people that like I think it's good to have on a crew, you know. And then Silas, he does have like a bit of, that's the only one that I have the emotion for, where I think I'm going to put that nested in sadness, because it's just like that regret of like, man, that was the life, wasn't it? Living in the core worlds. Those shit with this, they were fancy, you know. They had like nice things.
I have mine for you nested in joy. So I like to think that like when we're talking, like Silas is like gaining all this like nice, like feeding on those memories, but you're only feeling the sort of like loss of them or something. You know, that's interesting.
Yeah, that builds a very interesting dynamic. It's a very vampiric, you know.
I'm struggling, guys. How do you, so can we go into that a little bit more? How do you all reckon, like, if we, so for our 6s, the word was indifferent. How do you assign an emotion to indifferent? I'm kind of struggling with my 6s here.
So mine, I just sort of decided that the D6 towards Lily was indifferent. And to Scoot, because it's not dislike and it's not like. So I do have still, because I only have the 6 emotions, I've applied disgust to Lily as a sort of like, well, you know, she doesn't know anything. She's just like a stupid little idiot, you know? And then anger to Scoot, because I imagine most of Silas's interactions with Scoot are like, God damn it, can you just pay attention? Can you just once do the thing correctly? Like, I'm just thinking of how most of the interactions prior to now have gone, right?
Exactly.
Like that's where my decisions have come from. For Van, it's fear. I think like Silas is like slightly afraid. He's like done some bad things, but I think it's like a drop in the ocean compared to what Van's been up to. And I think he sees in himself the ability to go there and is afraid that he might, you know?
Cool. Thank you very much. Good examples.
And to clarify, you don't have to touch on one relationship and every emotion kind of thing. It doesn't. You can use more than one emotion if you'd like. So if all of them are based in joy, then that's perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that at all.
Yeah, I put Lily and Scoot joy for Quinn. They're both just, I think, solid people to him that he's like, yeah, good to hang out with. Glad they're there.
Excellent. Okay.
I find myself reading through these and like trying to find a reason to like hate you guys, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to
Wait
do
until
that.
the first session.
Yeah. No, they'll give me plenty, I'm sure. We'll be moving these around a ton.
Excellent. Okay, so moving on to one of the other trait sets is signature assets. Now, there's not so much a trait set, but these are going to be assets that you create before we begin the game. And these are things that are unique. They're unique weapons, gear, a vehicle, a particularly close tie to an organization. You used to be, a companion, or you used to be an assassin or something. Now, all your characters are equipped. So, like, if you chose a gun for your character, it wouldn't just be that you're the only one with a gun. It's Jane's Vera. It is the special gun. It is the one that the plot is going to hang on for a moment, kind of thing. The Bible for Shepherd Book is another example, or Serenity, the ship itself for Mal. These are very impactful elements that you're going to potentially call on at some point during the game. All signature assets start as a D6 die type, and you can step them up through either growth in between sessions, or you can spend points here at the character creation. And when applicable, when it comes up and it makes sense for you to be able to call on this for a given conflict roll, then you're going to be able to add your signature asset die to your dice pool as well. So you're each going to get 4 points that you can choose to spend establishing on stepping up these signature assets. So any that you want to establish will cost you a D6, or will cost you 1 point to establish it as a D6, and then further to step it up if you wish.
Do we want to discuss whose ship it is? Like who owns it?
Sure. Yeah. It would probably be a good time to bring that up.
Because it's going to be
figure it
someone's
has to be
asset.
Silas or Quinn, right?
I think it probably has to be one of us, yeah. Since the others are runaways or, not so well connected.
I hate to cast a vote where it wasn't asked for, but I gotta say, I think it would cause some awesome character stuff if it was Silas's ship, but Quinn was captaining it. That's just, I know, Austin, you're still going back and forth, but I think that would really create some cool
that's
tension.
funny. I like that. I do.
Yeah,
like
that's
that.
fun.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe even just like we don't even have like necessarily like captain, but it's like he's like the de facto captain because he's been like in the military and has like flown ships before and has like actually had a real captain. But
Silas
Silas
insists on being called a co-captain.
Or it's just like he's the captain in the sense that like he's the VP of operations and I'm the CEO.
Yeah.
Like
he's in charge because I've delegated that to him.
Yeah.
Because,
I actually think that's what would have
assistant to
happened.
the regional manager.
Yeah.
whenever it comes down to it, Silas, I can just see Silas with that. But just remember, it's my ship.
Yeah.
Yes. And no,
he's always willing to be the kid who takes his toys home.
Yeah.
No one gets to play.
I'm taking my ship and I'm going home.
That's perfect.
Okay, that's cool. So maybe I, like Silas, either hired or like got in touch with Quinn at some stage, and then it sort of like developed into that actually Quinn is like much better at running the ship and managing the people, and slowly but surely it's been the case that he's the captain despite the ship being technically Silas's.
Well, and you have
actually,
a D12
okay,
assigned to him, right?
Yeah.
As far as so he's important to you.
So
That's
there's
very
trust.
important.
What if your ship was where I was trying to stow away to get off planet after deserting,
Right.
after getting out of there, and like you discovered me, but we ended up like it worked out.
What if it was the same? Because I also would have had to run quickly because I was like disowned and blackmailed and had to leave. What if it was the same day on the same planet and you stowed away on my ship and I took off on the ship, and then I'm in space, I'm like, who the fuck are you? Like guns all over, you know, like.
What about like, okay, you get there as I am starting your ship up, like you are being chased. You are being chased, and you're like, you know how to fly this thing, right? And they're like, fuck yes, I'm great at it. Let's get out of here. And then we've just stayed together ever since.
That's so good.
It also informs why Quinn would be even more likely to accept Scoot as a stowaway.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yep. I would keep picking up these like stowaways and outcasts and stuff. That's cool.
Lily will 1000%. Anytime anything's wrong with the engine, she would first go to Quinn, and Silas would be like, yeah, that decision, whatever that was. Yeah, like feel the need to horn in.
Maybe that's one of the policies, is that like major decisions have to be brought to Silas.
But she doesn't, and that's why you're a dick.
But it's like, even like stupid, he has no input, he doesn't know anything about it, but it still is brought to him and he goes, that sounds fine. You know, like,
yes, it has to be. You insist.
It's like, what did Quinn say? Okay.
Yeah. Right.
What did your mother say?
Oh my God. Amazing.
That's fantastic.
Okay, the ship has to have a really highfalutin name then, because he's ultra wealthy, so it's got to have some sort of like, I don't know, Latin name or something. Yeah, something really fancy and ridiculous.
There's a lot of like Greek mythology that they name things after.
And,
yeah.
It's like Sky Dancer in Greek or something.
Yeah.
What kind of a ship is it?
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. It's definitely something that I was going to, again, leave up to all of you. Yeah, I know that I want for all of you to be crew members on the same ship, but the rest of those kinds of choices are things that I want all of you to make. And it's things like, how long has each of you been a part of the crew? What kind of jobs does the crew as a whole kind of typically take? What kind of ship are you picturing? Like, what would be the main function of this class of vessel? And then what's the name and whether somebody is the captain?
So stay with me. What if the ship is called the Hecatoncheires, but everyone just calls it Heck?
I love that.
Like, stupid, ridiculous, like Greek mythological name, but we never say it.
It feels very Firefly. Yep.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And then the other thought I had was that if it's one of my family ships, it's probably like something like a pleasure, like yacht, or like something ridiculous. Okay. You know, that kind of thing. Like, I don't think it's like a bust. Well, maybe it's busted now, but it didn't start off as like a busted old like cargo ship. But maybe we've retrofitted it enough to serve the function of doing whatever we needed to do. But it started off as like a pleasure barge or something, you know, or like something in that direction.
I love that. That's awesome. I get this picture.
I love the idea of like instead of a cargo hold, it's like a lounge or something that we now
there's an old bar that's
our...
never stocked.
Yeah.
Oh, damn, that's awesome. Yes.
It's
there's
brutal.
like a fucking chandelier, like still like like hanging.
Yes. There's mirrors on the ceiling.
That.
It's like a random broken ass disco ball. Perfect.
Yeah, like some fancy like mural on one of the walls of like Silas's family, but they all have like knife marks in the faces or whatever.
Oh,
just lots of like devil.
Scoot's absolutely drawn like devil horns and mustaches and
one or two penises. Let's be honest. Like,
probably more than that.
Kid.
Yeah, let's be real.
One or two
on everyone.
I was gonna say one or two pieces on each person.
Yeah, per
there's
person.
a dick or 12 on there.
Yes.
Yeah, without a doubt. Oh, this is fun. All right. So yeah, again, they don't have to be nailed down right now. It's certainly something that you can think on and kind of come to terms with before we get to session 1.
I do have a quick question on,
please,
real quick, if you don't mind. I'm so sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good.
Signature assets, like, are these like specifically like weapons or what?
No.
Could you explain that again? Okay.
Yeah. So like, it can be really anything. It's just, it's something that your character will occasionally use that is going to function more as like a narrative device. Things that are would have a big impact on a scene. It's the gun that you pull out of the holster and kiss because you've been through some shit and you know that when the chips are down, this is the thing you need to rely on. Or it can even, like I said, be a close tie to an organization. More than a relationship. This would be like you might be able to get like documentation, regarding, like Simon in one of the episodes, he was a doctor, and like he's able to get in good at the doctor on one of the big worlds because he knows how that works. He knows the system. He knows the ins and outs of how to get into the hospital and the security measures and those kinds of things. So that's the kind of thing that you could develop as a signature asset. Gotcha.
Okay. Wow. Thank you.
I kind of picked for Scoot a St. Christopher's necklace.
Perfect.
I'm gonna hold on to what its significance is. For in-game, but it's that thing that it probably before every grift, every pickpocket, every time the ship takes off, Scoot pulls this thing out and just kisses it and holds on to it, and it's that thing you see him with all the time, which also means if it's ever lost, stolen, or missing, it's going to be a problem for him.
I have a stunning marble chess set as one of mine. When he left, he was not worldwise, and he grabbed the thing that he liked the most. Should have taken money, should have taken whatever, but was like, has this like beautiful like antique masterwork chess set, and he was like, grab that instead, and like shoved it into his bag and ran to the ship, and now it's like the thing that reminds him of home. And a fancy gun that he also stole.
Fancy gun that he also stole. Just write that. Yeah, there's enough lines.
It'll also have a fancy name when I get there, but not yet.
Beautiful. Sure. Lily's Lucky Wrench is mine, and that's just can probably aid in different like mechanical checks of whatever kind. And yeah, it's just off the top.
Absolutely. And again, like you have 4 points, so you can establish 4 of them if you want. Add a D6. Or you could do one that's would be a D6, D8, D10, a D12. You could have one that's a D12 that's just like a supreme, the best example of whatever
Legendary.
That asset is. Yeah, exactly, an artifact.
Cool.
And however you want to disperse that is up to you.
Cool. All right, I have the ship at D8 and the other 2 at D6.
Cool.
It's funny that one of the things that you picked was a chess set, Lloyd, because I considered having that be a potential like angle of Van. Is that like it's just like it's a thing he can use like his strategy brain on that's not murder.
Interesting.
So maybe Van and Silas have played a couple games, and like thinker is one of my better traits, so it could be fitting. Just potential seeds for things down the line. As far as my signature asset, I don't really know exactly. One of them has definitely got to be some sort of weapon that will probably even be like a D8 or a D10. I don't know what that is yet. If it's a long-range rifle or a pistol or a knife or something, but probably just something of extreme quality that he was given for work when he was part of that he's basically held on to because it's really good at doing whatever it's for.
Right. And you could also even, since you were kind of mentioning as a part of Van's past that he was like trained as, kind of an assassin or what have you, you could have a tie to some kind of assassin's guild or organization as a signature asset.
Yeah, maybe it's even like the weapon has some sort of like marking on it that like distinguishes it as like, it's like a membership card and a gun at the same time, something like that, where
Yeah, that's cool. Very almost John Wick.
Yeah, I was thinking a coin or something, right? Or whatever it is.
Yeah, something like that would be cool. Okay.
I think I want to do like a even though I'm technically probably a fugitive with the Alliance, I think I want to use the Alliance as at least one of the like that relationship as one of the assets, because I'm assuming he'd have some knowledge. Now that I'm thinking more about it, I'm
Sure.
like, I think that maybe he was even like a captain rather than a ship captain in the Alliance. that
Okay. Yeah.
deserted rather than
like a ranked officer.
So like yeah, exactly. Because I like the idea of being an officer. I think that makes more sense. So I'll shift away from the medic. I'm going to kind of rearrange things a little bit, make him a little heavier, a little more hotshot. But yeah, I think and also I want I was thinking like an antique pistol from a like a hand me down, several generations old. Probably just like a regular ammunition weapon, not anything special.
Right.
But like just something that is like that he cares about, that I think it would be like some military weapon from like the pre-alliance days, like whatever, like some
Nice.
Earth or something like maybe an Earth relic even. But it's something that he keeps like very careful care of.
Yeah, that's cool. I like that. He takes it apart several times and cleans all of the pieces and fuel strips it.
Yeah, it's like constantly like looking at like for places to like find or fabricate like replacement parts and things like that. And there's like a lot of it is probably completely replaced by now, but he's more concerned with keeping it functional than even the like antique quality of it.
Yeah, I like that. That's awesome. Okay, let's see what else here. Okay. So in addition to signature assets, the last trait set that we need to touch on is going to be values. Let me scroll up a little bit to try to get this. Here we go. So once again, just like signature assets, this in relationships, this is not going to be something that will be a part of every single role necessarily, but it's always up for consideration. And it's going to be anytime that a situation leans on things like social morals, cultural principles, elements of honor, things of that nature, it's going to hold a little bit of an influence over your behavior or choice that you're rolling for. Anytime that would be the case, then you're going to be able to take your value die from that particular value and assign it to the die pool as well. You can step up any of these dice whenever you're assigning them, but you must also step down another in its place. So what they're going to start at is 3 at D6 and 3 at D8. And then if you want to move one up to a D, like from a D8 to a D10, then you'll have to drop like a D6 to a D4, as an example. The 6 following values are going to be what you're going to assign these dice for, and they are duty, glory, justice, love, power, and truth. And unlike emotions, these are going to be the values that matter the most to your character, that they cherish the most in descending order, kind of thing.
All right,
So
I got mine pretty quickly. Oh,
me
go
too.
for it.
Go for it.
Okay.
You go.
I got D10s for duty and justice. And that made me take a D4s for glory and power. And then I have a D6 for love and a D8 for truth. So not particularly interested in the power or the glory. I think that's part of the reason that he was so willing to desert, even as an officer. Because he was more interested in what was going wrong with the way the Alliance was treating people.
So I went pretty extreme with mine as an experiment. So both duty and glory are going to be 4. He's abandoned duty at this point, and he's not in it he doesn't want to be famous. Justice and love at 8, truth at 6, and power at 12. His power is freedom. It's how you that's how you get the life that you want. Is power is basically his underlying philosophy. Freedom comes with it, and freedom is his biggest aim.
Lily, shockingly enough, could not feel more different about that. Lily, but seriously though, I put power as a 4. I put glory as a 4. And in exchange, I have 3 8s and a 10. I have my 8s on duty, love, and truth, and then 10 on justice. Because just kind of overarching, the scales must be balanced is pretty important to Lily.
I have also justice at 10, although I think Silas's idea of what justice is probably different. He thinks that he has been cheated out of his birthright, and he wants justice for himself. And so while that's not maybe like actually what justice means here, it is what it means to Silas. He thinks that he's got power at 10 as well. Love and truth at 4. Love is not a motivator for him, and neither is truth. He'll do whatever he has to do to get what he wants. And then glory at 8. I think he is driven by a sense of like his reputation matters and that kind of thing. And then duty at 6. So pretty wild spread. I love this little section. It's so great.
Duty and justice are D4s. Given his particular upbringing, they seem very unimportant to him. Glory and power are D8s. I think as an oppressed member of an oppressed society, he ultimately wants to be able to rise out of that. So there's some element of wanting that power and glory. There's that sort of youthful, maybe someday I could have my own ship and become a famous pilot, do cool things. And then I put 10s on love and truth, because even though he is a thief and will steal anything that's not nailed down, he will also not lie about it. If you catch him, he owns up to it. And that can be both a good and a bad thing. Particularly given the circumstances, it could be very bad. But I think that's something that he values, is honesty in the words that come out of his mouth, if not in action. And I put love so high because I think in with this crew, even with the ones he doesn't have as strong, that he doesn't care for as much, it's the first semblance of a family that he's ever had. And there's a connection there. So I put, actually, as one of my signature assets is not the ship itself, it's the crew. Because it doesn't matter what ship they're all on, ultimately, as long as we have each other. He'll never tell you that.
God bless us, everyone.
The real signature assets are the friends we made along the way.
Exactly. That's incredible.
I love it, dude. Amazing.
That's fantastic. This is great already, and we haven't even done anything yet. Awesome. So everybody seems to have a really clear idea, again, of how some of these dice need to be assigned, which is just awesome to watch. Okay, so I'm going to kind of go back and discuss a little bit about how some of the dice pools and things are going to work whenever we go to roll these. So you're going to, as a player, describe what it is that you're doing in any given scene. Just don't worry about the rolls. Don't worry about what might, feed into the dice pool. Just describe it the way that it makes sense, the way that the scene should play out in your mind. And then if there is a conflict that needs addressing, or if there's a reason that I think that a roll is needed, I'll call for it. And then we'll assemble your dice pool based on what was narrated and the situation. So, like I said, the first 3 things that you'll look at are your distinction, your emotion, and your role in any given conflict. And then you'll also take a look at your relationships, your signature assets, and your values to see if any of those can apply to the role as well. You'll make your roll. Anything that comes up as a 1 cannot be used in the final roll, the final result. It's called a hitch. And I, as the GM, can activate those hitches to either create a complication or to add stress to your character. And you are then going to take whatever is left in the dice pool that did not come up as a 1, and you're going to choose 2 of those dice to form your total, the total result from the roll. And that's going to get compared to either the roll that I'm making against you or a target number that I decided before you rolled. The third die that you're going to pick, if you have one available, is called your distinction die. Nope. Sorry, hang on. Effect. Sorry, your effect die. The result, the actual value of that die, the face value of that die does not matter. Only the size of that die matters. And it's going to basically be compared to other things, other mechanical aspects of, it kind of colors the degree of success, if you will, or failure. So, that kind of informs how the dice pool works in and of itself. Does anybody have any questions about how any of these trait sets or how the dice rolls and hitches and stuff works before we move on to the other stuff?
I'm sure I will need another explanation on this when it
Absolutely.
happens.
Yep, 100%. I have no problem
I'm
with
going
that.
to reserve that for
I
me
think
right
like
now.
3 rolls in, we'll start to, grasp it.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, like I said, it works very different from any other role-playing game system that I've ever played. And it definitely took a lot of mental gymnastics to try to figure out how I think it works. But once you get it, it definitely is okay, now I understand how to do this. And it happens very quickly. But questions are certainly not a problem at any point. Even if it doesn't happen quickly, it's not a problem. Okay, if there's no other questions about that, then I think we can go ahead and move on. That covers trait sets. Now, the things that we're going to kind of touch on a little bit here are mods. I'm just going to kind of run through these real quickly because I know that we're getting close to wrapping up. The first mod that I'm going to talk about is Big Damn Hero Dice. So when you make a roll and there's an opposing roll and you beat it by 5 points, you consider that a heroic success and you earn a Big Damn Hero die. That's going to be equal to the highest die that's in the opposing dice pool. So if they had a D10, then your Big Damn Hero die that you have earned will be a D10 and you'll record it on your sheet as such. If you beat that roll by 10 points, then you would earn 2 dice of that value, and so on. At any point later on, whenever you make a roll, before I say whether or not it succeeded, you can choose to spend a plot point and use one of those pre-stored Big Damn Hero dice to roll and add to your total. Okay. Crisis pools are something that is going to happen on my end. Essentially, if there's a scene-wide issue that you need to deal with, the ship's on fire, or air supply is running out, then I will build a crisis pool. And while you are taking actions and making rolls, your effect dice will basically diminish that crisis pool. It will either step those dice that are in the crisis pool down by a die type, or sometimes eliminate them altogether, depending on how well you roll. And then once that crisis pool is depleted, then you have overcome that obstacle. You've dealt away with that crisis. Similarly, there's going to be something called the Heap of Trouble. And that represents basically my assets during a given session as a GM. It's going to be kind of the general prevailing threat over the entire session, and is going to be kind of my way of kind of pacing things out. There's going to be a specific number of dice that are established at the beginning of the session that go into that heap of trouble, and I'm able to spin those in a number of different ways, including crisis pools. And when you are rolling hitches, I have the option to make that heap of trouble worse. So it will fluctuate as we play. Stress. There's going to be two different kinds of stress that we're going to track in this game: physical stress and non-physical stress. So anything that happens to your character emotionally or mentally would fall under non-physical stress. Anything that would be bodily harm would fall under physical stress. It's kind of an abstraction of a PC's health, and mechanically it's going to decide your ability to remain impactful on a particular scene. If you fail a roll, you're going to accumulate stress equal to the effect die of that opposing roll. So again, if they're able to use a D10 on their effect die, then your stress will become a D10. If your effect die, or if that effect die is equal to or smaller than stress you might currently have, then it simply steps up your effect die, or your stress die. So if you were at a D8 and they rolled a D6 stress against you, your D8 stress would then become a D10. If at any point your stress goes from a D12 and gets stepped up again, you're taken out of a scene. You're not necessarily killed, you just no longer are able to do anything in that scene. You're knocked unconscious, you're vented out the air shaft, or the whatever. You're just no longer able to affect the scene. Between scenes, whenever we have a scene of rest or recovery, or we decide that enough time has passed for that to have taken place, your stress will step down. If it's a scene, then it's going to step down by 1. If it's a long passage of time, then it'll basically just reset. And plot points. So plot points can be earned and spent by you guys as players in a variety of different ways. They are not difficult to earn. So I highly recommend that you use them when it feels appropriate. If you feel like you want to, then just go for it. You're going to start every single session with at least one, and they carry over from session to session. So they're not going to be a dear precious kind of thing. I think rules-wise, that might be just about everything that I have to go over. Any questions from anybody so far? Nope. Cool.
Real quick, I'm so
Yes.
sorry. I
No,
was
no.
muted.
No apologies.
Big picture thing. I was just looking again at distinctions, and then I forgot what you call them. One of them is a hinder, and then the other one SFX.
Yeah, special effects or SFX.
Could you give one more example of one of those, just
Certainly.
so I can better frame?
Yeah.
I'm sorry to make you go way back.
No, not at all. Okay.
Like kind of like the last thing.
Yeah, so I touched on what the two that I chose for this example of Malcolm Reynolds for his brown coat who survives Serenity Value, but I'll go to what I chose for his Why Do You Sail the Black and How Do You Want to Die. So for Why Do You Sail the Black, the two that I chose are: when I start trouble with the Alliance, I double my emotion die.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And his second is: I can step up an alliance-related complication to introduce a non-mechanical story detail. So he can make a situation with the alliance worse by basically coming up with a story that, in the moment, of why it's going to get worse for you because he's involved in the scene. Okay. And then with a gun in my hand, or with my gun in my hand, the two that I chose are: when I'm outnumbered in a fight, I can step up my heavy die, because he excels whenever he's outnumbered by people. He likes it that way. He becomes tougher. And the second one is: if I step up a stress die from a physical source, I can create a D8 asset for the rest of the scene. So by making the bodily harm that he's taking on worse, he manages to get the key off of the guard. Or, he, takes the pressure off of someone else and puts the attention on himself. That kind of thing.
Okay.
And again, we can absolutely work that out in between.
I was going to say that's probably okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Absolutely. And if you have any ideas, feel free to throw it in our Facebook messenger or chat, or you can just message it to me privately if you'd rather keep it private. Either way, and we can kind of work out a good balance for how it could affect the mechanics and what you'll get out of it and that kind of stuff. Cool. Any other questions? No? Cool. The one thing that I want to also bring up and touch on is there, especially lately in the last probably 5 years or so, a lot of attention has been brought specifically to Firefly and its tendency to have a fetishization of Orientalism. And that's something that I want to address because it's not an okay thing to just sweep under the rug and pretend like it doesn't exist. Very obviously, we're 6 white people playing a game that has a mixture of American and Asian influences in it as far as just being baked into the source material, and I want to make sure that we address that with a careful consideration. Obviously the characters curse in Chinese all of the time, but the Chinese is horrible, and it doesn't make a lot of sense. So if we can just be aware of that as we're playing, then I think everything will be fine. I don't expect anybody to speak Chinese when their character is cursing. You can just say that your character is cursing in Chinese or what they're saying and translate it. Or if you feel up to doing the research and you're that kind of a player, then by all means do so. You will see a lot of Chinese names of places and ships and people and things like that, and I'm going to be doing my best to making them as authentic as I can, but again, I am a white person in America, and the best that I have is Google, unfortunately. So I'm going to be doing the best that I can, but I by no means mean any offense at all whatsoever. So I think that covers that base. We're just about at the end here for today. Our next session is the 27th of this month. So it should be a 2:00 Central start time, also on a Sunday. And I'm super ready. I mean, I've been excited about this game for a while, ever since I started learning the system and putting together these concepts, and then we got the players together. But now that I understand who these characters kind of are and the way that this ship is going to be laid out, I'm super stoked. So thank all of you very, very much for being patient with me as I kind of explain this, and as we kind of put this all together and we juggle schedules. It's really, really appreciated, and I'm very excited for it. So I'm going to pass things back over to my players, so once again they can kind of tell you where you can find them, touch on anything that you would like to touch before we call it a wrap today. So we'll start in reverse order, and we'll go with Jacob first.
I am super excited for this game. I've always wanted to play in the Firefly verse, and I could not imagine a better group of players and GM to do this with. I think this is going to be amazing to see unfold over the next few months, and I'm very much looking forward to it. Other than that, tune in on Mondays and Thursdays to MTD to catch our games.
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't overstate my excitement for this game, sincerely. And when each of you agreed to be a player in it, I just got more and more excited as each one of you said yes. Okay, next we have Carrie.
Thank you guys so much. I have a friend who calls things for me like Firefly nerd gap. I have never seen a single minute of Firefly. And so I've been kind of, I know. I've been a little bit intimidated, but just sitting down with you guys and having these discussions, I'm could not be more excited. Thank you all so much for being patient with me.
Absolutely. And like I said, I thrive on questions, so it doesn't bother me at all to field questions in the moment and to take a pause and address what needs to be addressed, because I would rather that everyone understand what's going on and the reasons why than to just kind of do it and move past it. But yeah, I'm super excited to have you on the channel for your first game here, and I'm really excited to be introducing you to Firefly. That's an honor that I did not expect. But if you do have the time and you do have the desire, I highly recommend that you go watch it. Not just for this game, but also just because it's probably one of the best television series that's ever been made, honestly. It's very good writing, very good acting, good relationships, and yeah, it's just all around just a great concept.
I'm sure after this, it's gonna feel like a TTRPG to me after I watch
it. Really does. It really does. The characters are very much kind of a party. They all have their strengths and weaknesses and have to lean on each other. It's very much built that way. Excellent. Speaking of built that way, Austin.
You tried. You know, they can't all be winners. That's okay. No, I'm super excited to get into this game. I love Firefly. I love this group of players. I'm just really excited to fly into the expansive black void with all of you. Speaking of the expansive black void, back to Jeremy.
Thanks, Austin. That's what they called me in college. Next, we have Jeff.
So I'm glad that I'm not the only one, because Carrie, I actually have not seen an episode of Firefly either. I'm very familiar with like a lot of the elements of it, which is why I was still like very interested in playing in the game. But I have not actually put it on the TV and watched it. So I'm planning on doing so between now and the first session. Probably not the whole thing, but at least an episode or two or a couple. But yeah, I'm glad it's not just me who's jumping in with into the deep end. Yeah, I'm Jeff. If you want to check out anything that I've done tabletop gaming related, you can check out Tabletop Terrors, which I do with Tim and James Carney. But other than that, yeah, looking forward to the game. It'll be really cool.
Absolutely, and that's incredible. I didn't know that you hadn't seen it either, Jeff. In fact, I'll challenge both of you. Watch the first 2 episodes at least. If you can withstand not then finishing the series before session 1, then I will give you an applause, because it will take some restraint once you finish the first. Well, it takes a lot of restraint for me to not rewatch the rest of the season if I see the first 2 episodes. All right, next up, last but certainly not least, Lloyd.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I always think like the session 0 is like the hype maker and the sauce provider, you know. It's like you can be enthused about a game, but then when you get in session 0 and you start getting an idea of who people are and what's going on, like it gets like infinitely more exciting. So I'm really keen to get going. I have seen Firefly multiple times. I've done the homework. So I hope that you're very impressed, Jeremy, with my dedication to the game.
Super.
Yeah, I'm really excited and I can't wait to get going.
Excellent. 2 gold stars. Yeah, I've been a huge fan of Firefly for a long time, and I've always really wanted to run a game, but I've always been very intimidated by it. And I've never found a system that I was happy with running a Firefly game in. Because I think what I was waiting for was something like Cortex Prime, where I can choose to put such a strong emphasis on the emotions and the relationships and the values and things of that nature to drive the conflict resolution, as opposed to everything being based around a character's training and prowess, which doesn't fit Firefly to me as much. So I'm really happy to have found Cortex Prime and to have hopefully built a version of it that's going to run a really compelling, fun Firefly game. And yeah, like I'm so stoked. And these characters, I'm so happy that all of you have brought such already well developed and thought out characters to the table. And I can't wait to start rolling dice with all of you. So. All right, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in for the Session Zero. It is deeply appreciated whether you watched it live with us or whether you may be watching at some point down the line in the future. If you like this kind of content, subscribe, like, do all of that kind of stuff. And until next time, may your dice roll high and your snacks always be within reach.